everyone for coming. If you guys can make your way to the arena here, where the big startup battles happen. My name is Atula Bogada. I'm the leader organizer of Melbourne Silicon Beach. Welcome to WeWork today. Many of you said that this is your first Silicon Beach event, so welcome. And some of you, I think a lot of you are from the Silicon Beach Meetup, but there are some from Eventbrite. Silicon Beach is Victoria's largest meetup community for tech startup people in Melbourne. And we have about 12,500 in Melbourne, and about 5,000 in Sydney, and about 3,000 in Brisbane, and other cities as well. Our big, hairy, audacious goal is to make Australia the second startup nation, second ranked startup nation in the world after the US. We are at the moment ranked number 5. So above us, US is high up, and then there's UK, Canada, and Israel. But we are going to move it up by 2025, and we need your help. We need you to start your own startups and make it a unicorn as soon as possible. It's $1 billion startup. So you've got a few startup founders here. I'll let them introduce themselves. They want to become the next unicorn in Australia. But you guys can start it off by getting a job in a startup. That's the best way to find out how to run a startup. I'm not going to take your time. I'm going to hand over to Stan, who's from WeWork, to say a bit about WeWork. WeWork actually owns Meetup.com, so they're supporting us, the drinks and the space, all free of charge. So support WeWork as well. I'll give it to Stan and get to Luke to take it away. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone, and again, welcome to WeWork. It's a real pleasure to have you here for the panel tonight. I'm Stan, I'm the manager of this building. For those who don't know WeWork, it's a global platform which provides the space, the community, and the services for creators and entrepreneurs. We have today more than 500 locations worldwide, in 5 in Melbourne. This one was the second one to open last year, and we have the full building. If you want to have a chat about WeWork after the panel, feel free to come see me. Just for your information, the bathroom are located around the corner on the right. There is an emergency exit here, and I'll leave it to the panel now. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Dan. So firstly, welcome everybody to WeWork. Like I say, I'm actually a member here in the WeWork in Collins Street, and I love it here. Very, very good. Stan and the crew are awesome, and so is everybody here. So very friendly, so I highly recommend it. I'm also a member of Silicon Beach, and I highly recommend Silicon Beach too. So lots of grassroots founders doing awesome things, and Atula has got, we've seen him in action just now, boundless energy and passion for startups and startup communities. So I highly recommend Silicon Beach. UCities is one of my businesses, and that's well, it's a startup community, online startup community I'm trying to build as well. So check it out. It's early, working on it, and it's going to be awesome. So let's start quickly with just introducing the panel here. Just put my glasses on. Okay, firstly, a welcome panel. So right to my left, immediate to my left, we have Annie Denton. So Annie is a senior talent acquisition specialist at Envato, one of Melbourne's unicorns, we suspect. Actually, we're sure it's a unicorn. The world's leading community for creative assets and creative people. Annie has spent the past 7 or 8 years in technical talent acquisition, strategic sourcing with a global focus on startups and scale-ups, and has worked on projects in search across analytics, data science, performance marketing, software engineering, and she knows all about startups. Jeremy, who's next to Annie. Jeremy Ramos is an associate partner with the Salient Group. 8+ years experience recruiting for SaaS organisations, interesting background across recruiting across APAC, so Singapore into Asia and locally as well. John, sitting next to Jeremy. John's a co-founder of Co-Roster, which was a blue chili accelerator startup. and he's building a business that intelligently adapts rostering to employer and employee needs, reducing burnout and staff turnover in high-pressure environments, and is also a very active member in the Silicon Beach community as well. Just quickly, 20 years in executive search, built and successfully exited my own search firm, so I've been a founder as well. I've run some big businesses, blah blah blah, worked at KPMG, etc. etc. Okay, let's jump straight to it. So, as Atula alluded to, working in a startup can be a dream. Everybody thinks maybe it's going to be the next PayPal, Atlassian, or how do you get on board a unicorn? Maybe you'll get some equity, maybe become like the PayPal mafia and be incredibly wealthy. And anyway, is it really a dream? Annie, what's it like actually working in a startup?
I'm not a founder, so I can't speak to that experience. I have worked with quite a few of them, and obviously in what's not a startup anymore, but it's a scale-up at Envato, and it's definitely not a dream, but I mean it's my dream career-wise, but I think that's because of the imperfections that come with it. So it's a super autonomous environment, which can sort of be like a sink or swim at times. People that you work with will be less concerned about kind of how you work and what you're doing. You can sort of be experimental with how you try to sort of deliver things and add value, but ultimately the test is going to be in what you deliver and how it scales. So it's very imperfect. Sometimes things don't work. But I think for me that's what's kind of kept it really interesting. And I think the biggest sort of myth is that it is all perfect, and you do go into maybe working in a startup with rose-colored glasses, but it's the reason why the industry is progressing so much is I think very much down to the fact that you're in the trenches and you have to do things fast.
Yeah, is that what you say too, Jeremy?
Yeah, for me, the hype around startups has never been this big. I suppose it is a dream for people who wanted the learning journey, people who really value that, and someone who can like just focus on the job, and then there's some level of accountability. I guess if you're just chasing for the money, i.e. potential return on shares, I think it's not worth it. There's some easier ways to make money out of it, I suppose. But I suppose I agree with you with a lot of stuff where the learning curve is so steep with startup businesses. I guess you really have to kind of like be on it, be on point, be flexible in multiple ways. And yeah, I guess for me, it's a yes and no response to that question. But yeah.
What about you, John?
So I'm coming at it from the other end. I'm a solo founder, small business, haven't established all our customers yet. We're still trying to prove our business model, find a product market fit, as they keep talking about. Definitely not in it for the money. It's a great way to spend all your money and burn all your friends' money and do all that sort of stuff. And with that comes stress and challenge and all of those beautiful things that you get when you borrow money from other people. But what you do get is the chance to fix a problem. And I think all good founders are people who see a problem, identify the fact that it needs to be changed, something needs to be changed. And we don't always want to change the world, but a lot of us do. And that's the sort of mindset you've got to bring to the smaller scale startups, those really early stage ones, 2 people, 5 people, you create a grand meal share in a desk, you're eating noodles because that's all you can afford, that sort of stuff. I know a lot of people who join early stage startups who, the big thing you've got to bring is flexibility. So you might be there as a product manager, you might be there as a developer, but you're also going to be driving the delivery van. You'll be, standing out in Flinders Street and handing out leaflets. You'll be doing all these things that aren't your job. Everything's your job when you're in a startup. And I think if you bring that sort of willingness to do that, because the goal is the common goal, fixing the problem, then you're in a good space. If you're not, that's probably not your gig.
Yeah, it's funny. So I do a lot of work in my executive search business, placing C-suite people in startups. And when you see somebody come out of corporate environment, and they move into a startup environment. All of a sudden, you have a CFO actually doing accounts receivable, paying the bills. You've got a CEO putting together IKEA furniture, and some people just don't have that in them, do they?
No, not at all. And it's funny, I was talking to someone before about an example. I spent some time at York Butter Factory when it was Team Square. And they had a space there where they had a corporate team they wanted to learn how to become startup friendly. And so they painted all the walls and they put blackboards up and whiteboards and exciting lighting and funky carpet and comfy chairs. And they took 20 people and they put them in there and they said, learn how to be a startup. And just transplanting people is nothing to do with what it's about. What they should have done was said to them, we're going to try this new idea, it's going to be great. You guys will earn some of the equity in the business if we get this good spin-off. But if we run out of money in 6 weeks, you haven't got a job. That's how you make people into a startup. And I think if you come from a corporate background where you're a lot more secure, there's a lot more red tape, things move much more slowly. If you can't adapt, you won't survive.
So Jeremy, is working in a startup, is it risky?
Yes, there's a lot of risk. It's always a risk in a reward kind of situation. I guess from a risk component, I'd say you have to factor in the burnout, running out of cash, or the product market fit is not there, or there's some issues around. Even the co-founders will break up or kind of have some issues as well. I guess those are some of the risks, and at the same time, and I guess the rewards that comes with it is obviously you're taking a bigger risk, but you're having returns, obviously, i.e. in the form of shares and options. You build your currency very, very quickly when it comes to startups. I suppose you get to respond to difficult situations very quickly. You learn a whole bunch of skills, and your career trajectory from point A to point B kind of fast track in a way, and your path to senior leadership roles are much, much quicker compared to obviously mature corporates. So yes, there are risks, but if you're that startup kind of person who's willing to take that risk, then the benefits definitely outweigh the disadvantages.
Yeah, I've heard people say working in a startup is it's like the new MBA. So 1 year in a startup, it's like 7 years in corporate. Is that the same, Annie, when you get into a larger? Nato still says at the start. Is it still the same?
Yeah, Nato's a pretty unique case just because I was saying to John earlier, it's never taken outside funding. It's still totally bootstrapped, profitable. So it very much behaves a lot like a startup, even though it is at scale. But then at the same time, I think because it behaves like a startup, things have started to slow down as it's scaled. That should have sort of been taken care of a lot earlier. So it's a different challenge. I think it's still, in terms of whether it's like doing an MBA, I've actually been thinking about doing an MBA recently and kind of looking into it. And the only real reason is to round off, I think, some of my more like quantitative data analytics skills. But in terms of the actual commercial knowledge that comes with seeing what the mechanics of a business like Envato are compared with a lot of the earlier stage startups I worked with, as well as a lot of the international companies that I worked with in my previous role, with Luke and I were working together, a lot of sort of larger tech companies that were setting up from the Australian operations from places like the US and Europe. Those experiences and seeing what the dynamics are of different teams, different people, why a company, at what stage does one company choose to set up their growth marketing team at the expense of maybe a really strong engineering team versus another that starts with a super strong tech stack that doesn't have the sales infrastructure to be able to actually get that product to market. That's the kind of stuff that definitely outweighs an MBA.
So let's unpack that, because that's an interesting point. So a company like Snapchat, for instance, you work with Snapchat. So what's the difference between a business like that that's come over from overseas to set up here as opposed to a local startup?
My observation, you can probably hear my accent, I'm from the US, but my whole career has been in Australia. That said, my observation about US tech companies is that they are very engineering centric. So one of the biggest friction points when Snapchat, I think I can say this now, I signed an NDA at the time, but we'll see. They're not doing so well anymore, so they lost a bit of their legal team.
There's anything you shouldn't say.
Yeah. In any case, I think it doesn't. You can get on Glassdoor and find out that when they run interviews, similar to Google or Facebook, it's all about the computer science fundamentals. So there, it's a lot more sort of fundamental. You have to have those fundamental skills with data structures and algorithms, things that you wouldn't necessarily learn if you went and did like a GA course on software engineering here, which a lot of people do, and they have better job opportunities because the market's more aligned with those pathways. So my observation, to answer your question, is that they are more computer science heavy in, I think a lot of companies will set up and get their engineering right. I don't think that that's not happening in Australia. In fact, Canva has a reputation for having sort of built their success very much off the back of the fact that they made their the company a really amazing place to work for engineers, which obviously goes against the maybe the logical thing that you might think with a product like that, where you build a great product by designers for designers. So yeah, I mean that's the biggest difference in my observation.
So just back to the risk-reward trade-off again. So I did a bit of work and actually invested in a company called Unlocked, which some of you might have heard of. So those guys raised $60 million in a couple of years. They were supposed to list on the stock exchange last year. Since people got in and heard the story, Matty Berryman's still out there punching away at Google, but they got into trouble when Google switched off an important channel for them in the App Store, and in the end the funding dried up and the business went broke, and everybody lost their job. Now this was one of the fastest growing, highest profile startups in the country, and everyone thought it was going to go really well. I thought I was going to make a lot of money out of that one. Turned out it didn't happen. But the interesting thing is everybody got a job. Everyone lost their job, but they all got a job. And some of them have better jobs, better prospects. So I just to underline the point, because we've spoken about how hard it is, and the grind. I suppose people talk about the startup grind, but you learn a lot, and the experience is actually really valuable and really valued as well in the market. Yeah, did you want to add anything on that? That was it. Okay. So, John, this one's for you.
I'm ready.
All right, you ready for this?
Aye.
It's deep.
Okay.
All right. Why do you work in startup land?
So I'm a corporate refugee. I work for progressively larger and larger businesses. Went and did my Masters of Management in IT. Thought, I'm going to run teams of people, be a nerd herder, and get all these guys to do all this great stuff for us. And one of the things that so my last job was a director of a company that had, for an Australian media company, had 65,000 staff. So really, really easy to get lost in seeing people who got 65,000. One of the things that they do is all these tests to make sure that you're not faking it and that you're not mad and all these sort of things. And it came out that I've got, I think 3% of the population are more driven than me. So I really, really, really want to go from A to B. And I don't like things in the way. And they keep putting things in the way. And I think a lot of people would nod their head and agree. That's just how it works sometimes with big organisations that can't take that risk. So I left all of that because it lets me do what I want to do, and I can stand on my own 2 feet. And prove here's my idea, here's my thing, and my thing works, and people buy my thing. That's kind of what I want to do to it's validation. So that's what drives me to do it. How's that?
That's an excellent answer, thank you. What about you, Jeremy? Why are you in startup land?
Yeah, if you look into my career, just looking back from Singapore and down to here in Australia, I haven't worked for the bigger corporates like the Hayes and Page of the world. And mainly because I've always wanted to be part of the working engine, part of the mission. I've bought into what they do because I love what they're doing. which makes them a standout recruitment business. And I suppose there's some level of like that sense of accomplishment, lots of learning, lots of growing, and yeah, I guess I've always built the practice for the businesses that I've worked with, being the first one on the ground, learn the ropes from there, from scratch, and then capitalizing the learning from that. And then yeah, I have never ever thought that I would be handpicked by a business who's 10-year plus here in Australia, and then say, hey, why don't you build a practice in Melbourne? Because you do have these skills at ABC. There might be a stretch or gaps in between, but if you're up for the challenge, then so kind of like 2 steps up from where I should be right now in my career. So yeah, could have never.
Thank you. Andy?
I really think that you can see the quality of the people. So I think when you use a product that works really well, that you love, some of the sort of biggest tech products that are sort of part of the vernacular, Facebook, etc. Bad example, but you can really see the quality of a product and know that there are amazing people sitting behind that product. And I think one of the things about tech, probably more than startups per se, because I'm a little bit agnostic at this point about what stage of scale I work in the business for, as long as I'm not like,
Startup's one of those words which mean a lot of
it can mean
things.
a lot of things. I don't think I don't have an interest in working for some of the super big businesses. I think you kind of get the red tape. But in any case, from startup to scale up, I find it really interesting that the ones that succeed kind of think about not just their product and their product market fit, but they kind of get the dynamics right behind that as well, and that all comes down to people. So, like you said, sometimes a founder can like have a dispute with their co-founder, and all of a sudden, or a bad decision gets made, or a legal corner gets cut, and the whole thing dissolves. And those are things that go back to the people that sit behind the product. So in my career, having worked with a lot of early stage founders and sort of seeing what worked, the common thread was definitely that it was good people operations, smart hiring decisions, not sort of cutting corners on how you enable people. And so that's kind of why I've chosen it for my career. Obviously, I work in a people-centric function within a scale-up, but that's lucky that I get to be a part of those people dynamics that can sort of facilitate good product development at Envato now.
Yeah, thank you. So the reason why I hang out with startup people is because I think they're awesome. So people having a go, taking a risk. The pressure that John's alluded to. It's a hard work, and it takes a really certain sort of person to get out there and have a crack at that. Also, I ran internal recruitment at KPMG for 1 year, and I really didn't like that. Met some awesome people, but working in a larger corporate, it's just, we were talking about this before, Annie and I, and it's just that it takes a lot of energy just to navigate the politics and the rules and and that's necessary in a larger organisation. It's not so much in a startup. The other thing is there's nowhere to hide in a startup, so you're judged by your results, and your results actually move the needle. So you do something, it has an impact. If you don't do something, they also can have an impact. So that's kind of cool. Are there personality types, Jeremy, that you feel that thrive in a startup environment? What traits do you look for when you're recruiting for your startup clients?
Sure. So I do have these metrics when I'm starting screening candidates. Obviously, kind of like recruiting from junior, mid to senior level. So there's some set skills that most startups are looking for. So one would be flexibility and adaptability. You have to demonstrate that you're able to wear multiple hats at the same time and wear them well, right? So with little less coaching and a lot of self-help practice. And the second one would be creativity. Obviously, your creative mind, that's where most of the startup founders are investing on. I say your ability to have creative solutions to problems, having big and small product innovations, or for most sales roles that I've been recruiting for, there are new ways to access to markets, because that's basically fundamental to the business, and I think that's really tangible. I think the third thing would be team player. So you're going to be working with a team. So be good at it. And I guess the second one would be, what else is in there? So execution. So it's all about execution, great execution in startups. So when you're kind of like faced when you really wanted to impress the co-founders, you have to demonstrate which, say, let's say a situation around how did you navigate yourself on, when the odds are stacked against your favor, how did you implement the specific change strategy within the business? And last one would be, I think, hustle. So yeah, the hustle. I guess that's one thing that I picked up from one of the co-founders, where I know this is not a skill journal, but this is an attitude, and it's quite difficult to pick that up. But ask the question: how did they turn a no to a yes? And basically, that's basically if they can articulate how do they navigate that adversity in their situations, then I think they could be a good candidate for us.
That's good, yeah. I can see you nodding from the panel. Just another question for you, Jeremy, a follow-up. So,
Okay.
From the outside looking in, sometimes it seems that startups are only for young people and men. Is that true?
This is a controversial one. Yeah, just solely based on my experience, I guess part of this would be the risk profile of most startup companies. I guess some people can take a reduced salary cap on and take on an uplift on stock options, but most people who are further on in their career, I suppose they have more financial obligations and commitments, they have mortgage, they have kids, everything. They tend to be more risk averse compared to the younger demographics, which are doesn't have dependents, pretty malleable, and they're earlier on in their stage of career, so they can take that risk. Mature organization in the other way, they tend to, obviously we've seen a lot of big organizations putting a lot of investment in diversity, inclusivity in initiatives. Well, I think that's always going to be a problem with startups, because so much hard it is to stay alive in startup that something like diversity is kind of like down their hierarchy of needs.
It's a challenge. So
yeah,
I mean, every startup I talk to, they say, look, if we can get a female person in here, please, we want them.
Yeah.
And I think there's some big questions here around talent. I mean, everybody knows the issues with STEM, trying to just get girls in there early and interested and passionate. But I do wonder whether they call it the bro culture, I guess, which we've imported a lot of interesting things from the US and some good stuff in the startup culture, but maybe there's a little bit of that too. What do you say to that, Annie? From an Envanto's perspective, obviously much bigger.
Yeah, Envato's a lot bigger, so there are very clear directives and I guess maybe the financial security to wait for good decisions, and that's not limited to just men and women in the workforce. But I think, again, another thing I was saying about earlier, it pays to get the basics right early on. When you need to push a product to market, of course, you need to make decisions, you need skills in the door, or that feature's not going to get delivered. But ultimately, if you can sort of start a strategy, start talent pooling early on if you're a founder. If you have to do everything anyway, nothing should stop you from investing in a LinkedIn license and just starting to look at people go network at meetups, start talent pooling people that you think look good, and try to build a team that's as diverse and or reflective of your customer base, because if you have a team of 4 25-year-old male UX designers and you're building a product for a global audience and 50% men, 50% women, a whole bunch of different nationalities, it's not going to work. It'll break eventually. So if you're thinking about your risk profile, think about that scalability piece, the people side, and getting those diversity questions right at the beginning isn't just paying lip service to a hot topic in the market. It's something that's ethical, that's actually commercially smart. So
yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is you look around at the audience, everybody here is interested in, you'd expect, getting a job in a startup or at least some involvement in it, and it's pretty diverse, right? So lots of people obviously interested in it. And I think as a recruiter in the space, as recruiters in the space, people look at talent, think it's important for us to make sure that we acknowledge that and address it. So to say.
yeah.
Okay, tough question. You dodged that one, John. So obviously, without mentioning names, sorry, John. What sort of examples have you seen where people haven't done so well making the leap, maybe out of corporate into a startup?
So I've seen quite a few people, in accelerators. I've been into accelerators. I've seen people in that probably don't have that right mindset. A big thing, so super early stage, if you're thinking of founding yourselves, you need to develop a thick skin. Everyone will tell you why your idea is crap and what they would do to fix it. They haven't got any skin in the game, but they'll still tell you. And advice is the one thing you'll get untapped and unlimited when you're a founder. Lots of people will tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. So if you can't, and you know what, sometimes the baby's ugly, sometimes you need to actually take that advice on, and people who can't do that, it's not going to work. You're not going to get product market fit, you're not going to be successful, you're not going to sell, because that's what you're trying to do, is make a thing and sell it. If people don't like it and you don't like that advice, you're never going to get anywhere. We talk about flexibility as well. That's important, and for me, it was patience. I had to learn to be really, really patient. I've been doing this, working in software for years. I thought 6 months would have something that was saleable and some customers. And the problem was a lot harder to crack than that. In fact, 3 years in, we're now selling. So I think if you don't have those things, you can't take advice and give yourself the time to do it properly and the runway, then that's probably not for you.
Is anyone on the panel, here's just an open question, got an example, again, probably without mentioning names, of someone who maybe made the move in and at first sight maybe you think they wouldn't make it, but they did.
Thought they wouldn't make it and they did.
So it looks wrong, is right.
I've got plenty going the other way. I'm just trying to think of one. I think there's stories like how Slack got developed. I mean, that came out of a chat application that was part of an in-game tool, and they realised that the game that they were developing wasn't actually the thing that they wanted, and Slack got born from that. So I think there's a good example of a startup idea that they took on some advice and changed and went on. I mean, Pepsi was called Brad's drink when they first made it, right? So if they didn't pivot, they wouldn't have had Pepsi. So there's lots of ways to pivot.
All right, thank you. So to the panel, what kind of non-technical roles? So I'm sure not everybody here is a coder, and in fact I know there's some people here who have come from finance backgrounds or marketing backgrounds who are thinking, gee, I'd really like to get involved in a startup. What kind of non-tech roles are needed? We'll go to Jeremy actually. And do startups value non-tech experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So non-tech roles would be the ones that I work with would be focused on sales and marketing and customer success. Because this three-pronged role functions on how to make and establish unit economics when they're starting. So obviously they want to have all those revenues coming into the pipe and to basically fuel that growth strategy. I guess the non-technical roles are pretty important for them, like soft competencies. One prime example was I brought in a robotics company from Canada recently here in Australia, and the spec is all about getting someone from tech company who understands SaaS, who understands cloud and all that stuff. And the first 2 weeks of my scoping, I was like, the market or industry that we're trying to break in is too far off from the tech space. They're pretty much selling into facilities management or industry, like warehouse and logistics and all that. So how can and basically I went back and challenged that. Should we find someone in the industry who understands the problems and things like that? So soft competencies and managed to pull in someone from a facilities management company and then basically won the role versus the other candidates who are in the tech space. So I suppose it's not just about the tech that is important. It again goes back to the soft competencies and the ability to be flexible and adaptable and the networking skills as well. I think that's really important. Yeah.
And I also think to the businesses, the US businesses launching out in Australia, the Stripes and survey monkeys and some of the businesses we worked with at the previous firm, those businesses, generally the tech's offshore. So it's not so much about tech, it's really the country manager role for those sort of businesses is really a sales role. So it's they've got revenue targets they need to hit, and it's less about running a tech team or a product team. So that's where that becomes kind of interesting.
I'll just add quickly, most startups aren't actually tech companies. You're actually, like, we're a rostering company, we're HR, we're not tech. We use tech. I think people fall into that trap of their startup is a tech company, and you're probably
The
not.
multiples are better.
Yeah, exactly.
So many skills that are not coding, definitely. A huge one, which is, I think, like, this is transcending multiple industries at the moment, but analytics, data is huge, and a lot of people come from analytics backgrounds that may have been in a bank or consulting. Like, those are the types of skills that will not go anywhere anytime soon and will only continue to grow. In Envato's case, it's a very creative business, so for those who don't know what it does, there are multiple products, but basically it's started as a company that built different websites for different kinds of digital creative assets, so like WordPress themes and stock photos and video files and stuff like that. So a lot of the early hires were really either technical or very creative. And then later on, strategy became really important. So people who came from management consultant backgrounds ended up kind of coming into the business and adding a layer of like data centricity that wasn't previously there. Also marketing, growth marketing is another one that's not going to go anywhere. So if you have a marketing background and you've got good number skills and you are ready to use data to drive how you do your work, then that is a really, really smart area to be paying attention to right now.
Absolutely, I second that as well. So if you were advising someone, and maybe there's some people here in this boat, someone who'd never worked in a startup environment, what would you suggest they do to make themselves attractive to a startup? Jeremy?
First thing is know what you want. I suppose you have to ask your question, what industry you want to work in, and what type of role will have the most impact in, say, 2-3 years down the line. Second thing is check your brand. A lot of failures are kind of like the hit and miss from my end would be...
Sorry, was that check your brand?
Check your brand.
What does that mean?
So a lot of candidates that I've seen from the last 2 years here in Australia, they don't really pay attention on their LinkedIn profiles. Consider your LinkedIn as your online CV. It's just like, it's one of the loopholes that I've seen in the market. So if you need to clean a lot of, like, say, a developer or say even sales have one typo error in their LinkedIn profile, that already put some negative connotation on your brand. The other thing is use your network as well. So if you know someone in the startup community or know anyone who you may have worked with before, just ask. You don't get what you don't ask, right? So, but be specific on what you want. Say, I want to be in your business because you're passionate about it. The fourth one that I see really, really important is and really significant is your ability to research on your startup job sites. If you're really targeting on the startup jobs, we have AngelList and we have GetLatka. I'm not sure if you've heard about it.
It's new cities.
In new cities, yeah, they are ideal for stopping startups. And what you see there is the up-and-coming startups in the region. You'll see what kind of pitch they've made to the investors to get the money, who are the investors, and at the same time how much money they've raised to date. So those are good starting point. And the last one from my end would be you have to love your mission. There's a lot of human element on startup community. So the co-founders will be really, really impressed if they know that you've been using their product, you've been a brand advocate, even to the point of when you started having social interaction on LinkedIn, say, Luke posted something about new series and you made some interaction with that. And then if you end up being called the stalker internally because you keep on like doing stuff around their product, you're doing everything right. Because you're making some noise in the market. So yeah.
It's all about that networking piece, I think is really, really critical. I mean, coming to events like this, rubbing shoulders with other founders, and you know, every unicorn started off as just 1 or 2 or 3 people, right? And there are probably people here, you know, who are going to build a nice, sizable business. And if you're in there and you're meeting with them and you're having a drink and you're talking about their issues, and you're helping and you're pitching in, then you're there, right? You're on the spot, and that's really, really important. Jeremy's point around you know, LinkedIn and sort of connecting and reaching out. It's a really welcoming community, like around the world. Startup community is really welcoming, but they can smell a tourist as well. So you know, I see a lot of corporate people sort of trying to come in and like, oh, I really want to come in and join a startup. But they're not really in the community, and it starts from there, I think. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I agree. And you know, we talk about UCs and Silicon Beach and using those meetups as a way of sort of getting yourself out there, introducing yourself to people. And you can catch some of those soft skills as well. I think what Jerome was talking about before, about having an understanding of what life is like in a startup before you get into a startup. So for small scale businesses like me, I'm the only full-time employee. I've got 5 part-time people that work with me. And some of those guys actually volunteer their experience, and we open the doors to some of their code and get them, you know, bring them along. So we had a guy just doing a UX course recently. We brought into some customer reviews, and he was, you know, doing a piece for Academy XI. He was learning some courses. They're actually good ways to get in. I'm not advocating working for free for people for all time. If you say, look, you know what, I've got a thing and I want to go, you know, 5 weeks or whatever, and I can give you a couple of hours a week. Approaching startups is actually a good way to do that, and I'm assuming you can do that with any scale business. I don't know if everyone's going to open their doors to do that, but that's a valid way of getting in there. And then you've got on your CV that you've actually done some work with X company and you did this work and it was a real thing.
Yeah. Annie, did you add anything to that?
No, I mean, at the risk of sounding redundant, I think that all sounds really right. Yeah, I think it's what you've done in your career is so much more than what you do in whatever your current role is. And if you're looking to make an industry switch, then that's not actually like, that shouldn't be something that's scary. I think most startups or mature companies that are mature in the way that they hire are going to be looking at the full package. Like, what do you do in your spare time that isn't necessarily core to your role? If you're a business analyst during the day, but you've gone on the startup big Slack channel or UCities and gotten like a gig doing something with a really early stage startup that's not for any money, but it's just a hobby. Like, that's the kind of stuff that you're showing that I guess creates a more holistic picture of what you've done, but also like thinking about what you've achieved throughout your career that's transferable, as opposed to just what the like core tasks of your role are, and sort of packaging up those achievements to build a narrative that will make sense to someone in a completely different industry. That's how you make the shift.
Yeah, that's great. So what, that's the way I look at it too. So people who want to make a jump from a space into another space where they haven't got, you know, that experience. So you look at your skills, you look at your knowledge, you look at your experience. I mean, for instance, if you're, say you're a more experienced person in the energy sector, and you want to get into startups, you think, well, what have I got? So you've got networks in the energy space, you've got contacts, you've got domain expertise, ideally deep domain expertise in the energy sector. Now, all of that as a package could be really interesting, I know it is, to a startup that's looking to disrupt the energy sector. Contacts, they want to get into a company, they want to run their pilot programs. So what you do there is you go to the startup bootcamp guys who are running accelerators on energy sector. Right? You go to the meetups around here, you put your meetup, owned by WeWork, you plug it in and you look up energy sector startups, and you're going to find something. There's going to be a meetup there. It might be just 2 people, or it could be 20. They all start off small and they get bigger and bigger. But once you do that, then you talk about your expertise, you plug in, make connections, you link people up. That's value, you're demonstrating value. Then next thing you know, they're saying, hey, come and join us. We want you part of this journey. So
just to add add to that as well. Like the way that a startup founder will land around funding is, or founders, is by building, like if they have a product that does something really great, but they can't tell a story about it, then it's never going to go anywhere. So I think the same thing applies to anyone's career. You just have to be able to really string it together and find the common links between the different things that you've done and have an airtight narrative that you can tell to anyone in any context.
Yeah, I mean, and on the skills piece, so there are certain skills which you can translate across any sector, right? So if you've got finance skills or analytical skills, as Annie's alluded to, you can use that in any sector. That's useful stuff, right? So I think if you've got that, that helps you jump the group. And then experience is the other piece too. So startup founders, often they don't have experience in scaling businesses because it's kind of a new thing, right? So if you're a more experienced person who has some experience in that, that's kind of useful. If you're, I don't know, elite sports person, I don't know how many elite sports people we've got here, but I think maybe a couple. Then just that mindset and that ability to kind of handle pressure and deal with things is kind of interesting as well. So they're the bits that I've got. So those are my official questions. So hopefully everyone's still okay. There are too many people yawning, so I'm still hanging in there. I wondered, is there anyone got questions from the audience? We'll take any. Oh, we've got a few. Would you mind reading?
Thank you so much. I was curious, in the startup space, is it common that people approach startups on their own initiative and say, hey, I have these services or these skills available that I think might be useful here for you? Or is it more that since the budget is also limited, that it's really focused on very precise roles that are needed to be filled?
Absolutely, okay. Look, it's happened a couple of times. I'd actually like to have it happen well. We talked before about having that pool of people, as you're getting going. So we're seeking funding now, so when we've got funding, we want to hire people. And so I go out my way at meetups to look around and see who's there and what they're up to and see if there's opportunity. But by all means, reach out. That's what LinkedIn's for. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, there's nothing to lose by putting yourself out there. That's a good idea.
Any more questions?
Hi, I'm more interested in the recruitment process. When you see the specs of what you need for a company, like how often do you actually find the perfect candidate that you have in mind for the job itself? Is it frequent? Yes, no?
So it depends. Like in my case, what I'm doing with Envato now, it's kind of in a growth phase where there isn't a huge, so a lot of the roles that we're hiring in analytics and the way that we're hiring, there were 2 managers for growth marketing and analytics that came from Israel, set up these teams. The Israeli market is super ahead of the curve. Like they're actually hiring in ways that Australia isn't in huge numbers yet, and so a lot of the recruitment has been global in order to sustain a lot of the aggressive targets that the company set out for itself in order to grow to where it needs to be. So some areas are really uncompromising. Others, there's a lot, like ultimately when you're moving fast, you need certain skills sometimes for some roles, but in others, there will be absolutely more appetite to look at the full package, consider what might be transferable, and yeah, I think in terms of the recruitment process, it's designed to establish not just skills fit, but also values fit. We don't really use culture fit because culture doesn't scale, but values do, which is actually probably a good way to hire if you're in an earlier stage company as well. But yeah, it will establish skills, values. It will also establish sort of your ability to fail as much as your ability to help the company succeed. Because if you can fail and you can talk about it, then you can learn from it. So I'm probably giving you a really vague answer, but it kind of depends on the role. And there should be, at some stage in a company's growth, an appetite to consider people who aren't necessarily 100% fit. You should always apply.
I'll give you a more specific answer, but I think that was good. I'll give you an 8 out of 10. So the way I look at it is if you're applying for jobs and you're not getting an interview, if that's what happens, there's a few reasons. So firstly, you don't have the right experience, and in that case, what I suggest is you go online and you have a look at the jobs at LinkedIn. It's there. 80% of the world's professional population is online. Their CVs are right there. So a lot of people don't kind of realise this, but if you want a job and you want to become, let's say, a growth hacker, and you're applying for growth hacking jobs and you're not getting an interview, go online, plug in growth hacker, and have a look at all the growth hackers and see what they've done. Have a look at their background. What do they study? Where do they go to? What do they do before their growth hacking job? How do they get there? So what was their pathway? So that's one way to do that, right? It's all information that's just publicly available. The other thing is if your CV is not getting you an interview, maybe your CV sucks. That's possible too, right? So have a look at it, get some friends who have a look at it, get some advice from a recruiter in the space and say what's going on. I'm not getting any interviews. And review it, right? And I won't go into the infinite details of how you do it, and everyone's got their own opinion, but if it's not getting you an interview, there's something wrong, right? Either you're trying to get something that you haven't got the experience, or you're not expressing yourself in the way that's required. I think that was all. Okay. So what do you give me a score out of that one, Nancy?
10.
Hello, my name is Alejandra from Mexico. This question is for you, Annie. The first time I heard about Levanto, I was actually working in Guadalajara, so you have offices there. My question is close to the previous question. I suppose every time I see it, like posting, a job posting on Invito, I feel like I don't have these skills. I'm a growth hacker, but I have experience in finance and sales, and recently innovation, working for now Energy Australia. But when I see a posting, I don't feel like I have like 10 out of 10. I will probably have 6 or 7. And that kind of stopped me to apply. Would you say that would be something that stops people to apply if you don't have 100% of what you are actually asking on the description?
Yeah, so that's good feedback, thank you. And I'm glad as well that you've heard of us through Placeit. So for context, Invito acquired a company called Placeit in Mexico about a year ago, just over a year ago, and it's gone from about 60 people to over 200 in that year. So we have third office, there's another one in LA now as well. But to answer your question, so my biggest piece of advice, like Invito hires on value fit, but also it's moving fast, and there are a lot of roles that require certain skills to deliver what we need in tight time frames. It's still lean. So my biggest piece of advice is always apply. You'd be surprised, I get job applications for people who have literally none of the skills I'm looking for, who will call me and push to get that job, to the point where I have to tell them, you have to just speak no for an answer at times. But I wish that more people who were sort of scared away by the lack of 100% fit would throw their hat into the ring, because those tend to be the best hires. And I don't know what the roles are that you're looking for if we're talking about growth hacking or capitalizing on your finance skills. It doesn't really matter. The point is you should never sort of hold back. You're not going to do yourself a disservice by not trying, or at least getting in front of someone, because I or one of my teammates might remember you for later. It's good practice to try, figure out what the feedback is and where you failed and learn from that. I'm not saying you're going to fail, but learn from the things that don't go well just as much as the ones that do. But if you don't try, then you don't have a chance to learn.
Any more questions? Okay.
Hi, I'm Cedric. I'm a web designer. Thank you for your answer on hiring. It was really insightful. So I always thought that startup are looking for more people who will be really invested in the startup for a really long run. So people who have permanent stay in Australia. But somebody else told me startup don't have enough funding. They don't have a lot of money. So they're most likely looking for people who are temporary. So it's fine that you're like a student who just graduated. So I was wondering what's your take on that?
I'll just answer that quickly and then pass the mic. there's no one size fits all. So like startup is such an all-encompassing term. It's really anyone that's starting a small business or even a business that's like 500 people that still, was a small business a couple of years ago and has grown quickly. Totally depends on the stage of the company, where they're at, what their funding looks like. You'll find jobs that are open to both.
I guess one considerable factor for that would be a lot of startups, they don't have the bandwidth yet to sponsor visas as well. I think that's one of the challenges from there. But I would like to disagree that they're not welcoming, fresh graduates or just finished uni and stuff like that, because I think the majority of the startups who are looking to have that low cost, low skill type of role, and they're willing to invest on people, students who's just coming out from university, they're more actually attracted to this class because they're pretty malleable, whatever they basically, in terms of models, and like I recruit heavily on sales. So say if you haven't had that, year, 2 years of experience in sales, and you do have the gift of the gab, you know how to communicate, you know how to articulate value propositions and whatnot, they're more than happy to invest in you. But yeah, I guess that's where.
Our team's all around the world, so it doesn't really matter where you are. We can't sponsor visas, obviously, but there's challenges, so if we don't want degrees of complexity in bringing people on, but if someone can only give us part-time, everybody else that works for me is part-time. So we're their side hustle. We don't worry necessarily about full-time. And I think if you have an open and honest engagement from the get-go and say, you know what, I'm only here for 3 months and then I'm going off to Brazil or Mexico or US or whatever, it's not a surprise, and that's a conversation you can have at day one, and you might be the perfect fit.
Yep. Thank you.
Just a flip side to the questions that have been asked. As a startup, how do you attract good talent?
So for me as a founder, it's about telling the story. I want people who are interested in what we're trying to achieve. The same way I'm selling it to customers and to investors and everybody else. So that's mine.
I guess from my experience, it's always about the narrative, the story behind. It goes both ways. I guess if you're really sure and conscious about what type of environment, what kind of people you want to work with, and pretty much reflective or in synergy with the startup family, then you go for the startups. And the other thing is, I guess in terms of the what's the question again? Sorry.
How do you attract talent?
Attract talent, right?
We
Okay.
don't have culture. We don't have people.
Sure.
It's very early days.
Well, that's the whole thing, because you get the culture right by being part of the startups. You make the culture, right? So it's because of the dynamics, the team dynamics. So you get to, I think from candidates with say 1 year to 3 years of experience working for say a mature organization and wanting to basically, if I'm calling them and say, hey, I have a cool startup, sexy product, they've already sold X amount of dollars in the market. I guess it's about you get to rub your shoulders very intimately with the real innovators in your industry, and you bask in their wisdom. It's always about the growth opportunities, the learning curve, anything that goes along that, and then paint the picture. How do you plan to architect your career in the next 3 to 5 years? If you're going to stay in your company right now, do you think in X amount of years you'll have this type of level of growth? Then you get to keep them thinking. So I think that's the golden question. How do you plan to architect your career in the next 3 years or so? If you think that staying in the company, your current company, would be best, then stay there. If not, then startup could be your better option.
Yeah, add to that, like your employer brand should be an extension of your brand, whatever your product is. So use what you've got. If you have a low budget, if you're really early stage, build out your angel list profiles so that you talk about your product but also your team. Same way as investors, like you'd never pitch to an investor without talking about who the founders are and who's in your team. in Envato's case, really early on, it was one of their key points of difference was they were a bit of a dark horse because like there weren't really that many startups in Melbourne 13 years ago, and they just kind of capitalized on the Ruby community. So they had really cool problems for Ruby engineers to solve. It was open source. You were leveraging like a global community of thought leaders, but also it was talking about this increasing the numbers were just ticking up and up and up with dollars paid out to authors. So people around the world were able to earn a living selling WordPress themes that they'd made in their mom's backyard. There was probably not a PowerPoint in someone's mother's backyard in the Ukraine, but anyway, you kind of just want to have a good narrative about who your customer is, what your product is, and who are the people that are making that product. And that should all be front and center on any kind of social media that you have, that you're using. I think as you grow, you want to have a clear, really catchy careers page that'll talk about your benefits. Figure out what you value. So if you really trust your staff, or if you want to have a good culture, start by hiring well and trusting your staff from day one. And then the biggest recommendation that I can make if you want to continue to attract great people in this market is use that trust to give them the flexibility that they need to do their job as they want to. It's not a huge investment. Get the Google Suite, have Hangouts ready to go, use the basic Slack package, whatever works, and have that be part of your culture and make sure that people know that that's kind of how you get to work in that context.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. So use what you've got, and if all you've got is you and a great idea, make sure it's an awesome idea and your passion's there, because people, they're not joining your business because it's nascent, right? So it's still growing, so they're joining you. And so that sort of first cohort builds the culture. That becomes the initial sort of seed that builds the culture for your business. So I would look at early hires as co-founders in some way or another. You might not call them that because that comes with expectations in certain things. Sometimes you should call it that. But these are people who are backing you, who believe in your vision, believe in your passion, and you know what? They're not going to be attracted to that unless you're out there selling it or at least promoting it. And having your social, that out in your socials is really, really important. If you're a technical expert, so if you're coming from a CTO, like a technical founder, then it's about being great at that, and just working on cool stuff, and that's what technical hires they love that. Like, that's what they live for. They'll trade off money to work on a cool problem, right? So you just got to use what you've got, and then if you've got some investor interest, well then that becomes a selling point. If you've made it into an accelerator, like if you've joined I'm doing work with a business called Tubi at the moment that does dynamic pricing for movie tickets. So they were one of the first businesses that did some crowdfunding with Equitize. So that's kind of cool. So people, that's interesting. Then they're also one of the first 10 to get into the Scalata Ventures cohort. That's kind of cool too. So John's business is a Blue Chili accelerator business. That's kind of cool. And also, these accelerator businesses, they've passed a quality hurdle too. It's not easy to get into Blue Chili. There's a lot of startups that want to get in there. It's really hard. So if they've passed that initial filter, you've had some experts going, these guys are good. We're going to back them, we're going to support them. That kind of should give you a little bit of confidence that, okay, well, maybe there's something here. It's still risk, right? Because it's a startup. But at least there's that filter of quality. So I'd recommend, if you're a startup founder, I like the accelerator programs, and there's lots of them out there, and I think they're very worthwhile, and they get you on the radar as well.
One more thing to add. If you're hiring engineers, you're probably going to have to go find them yourself. So you should really be ready to headhunt. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, learn how to headhunt. Or come and see Jeremy or me.
Take one last question. Okay, two.
Hi, Chris Johnson. Remuneration. How does the startup world compare to the regular market?
That's a good question. The short answer is it sucks. Yeah? I'll just add a little bit more to that. So, look, startups don't have a lot of money. So, and cash burn. So if you're in a business and you're burning cash, well, that means there's literally a timeline before you run out and you're out of business. So cash is important to conserve from a startup perspective. If you're a person looking to join a startup and you're expecting a big salary, you're not a startup person, right? So that's an immediate, like, well, sorry, they're not right. A lot of the people I place from larger corporates or who've made money in their own startup, they take big salary cuts, to join a startup, because they know what's the point of me coming in and taking a massive salary when it's going to just kill the business. So so these people, and I'm talking the C-suite level, so they'll get a nice little chunk of equity or some earning potential, and there's lots of ways to slice and dice that. But they're trading off salary for future potential, right? And at the moment when they get that, it's like it's worth nothing really, but it's worth potential, and that's what they're buying into.
Any rules of thumb?
Look, it's literally a piece of string. So someone looking to, so say I'm a corporate person, or I've run a startup and I'm looking to make a decision to join a startup, and I have to value that equity, right? Someone's going to say, hey, it's worth X, but who knows, right? So what I do is, and what most of my candidates would do is they go, okay, well, if I stay in this job, I'm earning, let's say $300,000 a year, right? I'm earning $300,000 a year in this corporate job, and I'm going to balance that off against this 150k or 180k salary with the potential promise in 5 years that the startup is going to make some sort of exit, an IPO or a trade sale, and I'm going to get a multiple of what this potential equity is. So there's lots of moving parts, but it's basically an opportunity cost measure. And there's also do I want to work with these awesome people? Do I buy into this fantastic vision and what they're looking to do? And you have to get ticks in all of those, because this is like, joining a startup is not like joining a corporate job, not like joining a bank, right? Like you're putting your soul, you're putting all of yourself into it, and that's the cool part about it. Like you're investing yourself in that, and it's not just a job. It becomes, it's more than that. It's hard to define until you've actually sort of seen it. But when you see it, you know that's what I want to do, and I want to do that forever. And that's the startup person.
Just to add to that, the salary run package. So we do have the 3 client profiles that I usually work with in startups. So we do have early stage, we're Series A, just basically started their funding. The second one is lean entry market. So US companies with established economics and trying to break in APAC markets. And then the third one would be, your more organic, mature organization. So the second one, lean entry from US, tend to compete with the market, or above average the market, because they do have more cash flows from US compared to I'd say just by experience versus the Australian tech startups. So I've looked into the bandwidth of salaries, and you could easily see 10-15% margin difference when it comes to this to the roles that I've been working with. So again, if startup is defined as the market entry, I mean overseas or international tech vendors coming in Australia, then you're probably going to be hitting good marks on bandwidths of salaries. But Australians tend to kind of like have a very median pace of pay grade or pay scale.
Then you get more equity probably.
More equity in Australia. But yeah, so they're more than open to be eligible to sharing some options, whatever which one is more creative. They can be very creative on packaging the numbers at the end of the day, but yeah.
So it's not a great, probably not the answer you wanted.
No, these are valid points. Yeah.
Just a quick question. If I see a job advertised as full-time, but I'm looking for a contract or part-time, is it worth still applying for the role? And when would you be kind of open about that? Is it during the application process at the start, or?
Should always apply. Yeah, I mean, right now at Envato, I'd probably say no if I saw an application. I was applying for a full-time role that wanted contract because it's not how our budget works. But definitely, I think in a lot of cases, if it's a quick win or yeah, exactly, if it's an awesome fit, like.
And you'd be open with it on a cover letter?
I don't think you should ever hold back from applying. I think as long as you can tell the story and say this is actually what I'm looking for, but I really love this job for X, Y, and Z reasons, like throw your hat in the ring, it can work out.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll close there because it's 7:30, because we have to clear the building by 8 o'clock. Stan and the team has to go home. I have to go home too. My wife said don't get too late because I'm in a startup actually. I used to work in the tax office. Don't worry against me. I got a work redundancy package last year, and now my salary went from a 6-figure salary to 0. So we are in startups, I understand the pain. So can you please give a big round of applause to ladies and the team? It is a really eye-opening panel, and I'm going to watch the video again, and I'll share the link to the video. We upload it to Silicon Beach TV YouTube channel. I'll send it through Eventbrite and Meetup. Those of you who came through Eventbrite, please join the Silicon Beach Meetup, because we are having a lot of events coming up, open co-working days. I'm actually trending on LinkedIn for startup hashtag, it tells me, and that means a lot of investors and people in the US, in Silicon Valley, is connecting with me, so I can connect with you guys. I'll open my LinkedIn's Find Nearby feature. If you open Bluetooth on your smartphone LinkedIn app, you'll see me. And also you can connect with each other with the QR code. I don't think anyone of you have such a big QR code. My QR code is the biggest. So,
Yeah, that's a big one.
I'll open the Find Nearby thing, and anyone who open Find Nearby on LinkedIn can connect with anyone else who opens that. It's networking is very important. I'll give the final word to Luke, and we'll close it there. Keep networking, and I'll close the video here. So if you want to mention any names, you can mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Atula. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I'm not going to set up the near-find thing, but just search me and I'll accept. So Luke Henningson's the name. So, and Jeremy, and I'm sure the other guys would as well. Don't want to dump you in it, but please reach out. Thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time. So thank you.